If you're a cat owner, whether you just brought home your very first kitten or you've had cats your whole life, this video is going to be the last one you need to watch on the subject. I'm going to walk you through everything, from the way your cat moves and communicates, to feeding, litter box habits, grooming, health warning signs, and the mistakes almost every new owner makes without realizing it. I know that's a lot to cover, and this video is longer than most you'll find on this topic, but that's intentional. Most channels break this information into 10 different videos, which means you have to go hunting for the piece you actually need. I wanted to put it all in one place, so you can either watch straight through or jump to the section that matters most to you right now, using the timestamps in the description. By the time this video ends, you'll understand your cat on a level that most owners never reach. And honestly, your cat is probably a little confused about how you suddenly seem to know exactly what they want. Let's get into it. Understanding cat body language. Cats don't have the luxury of language, so their entire body becomes the message. If you pay close attention, you'll realize your cat has been talking to you the whole time, you just weren't fluent yet. Let's start with the tail, because it's probably the most expressive part of a cat's body. A tail held straight up, sometimes with a little curl or tip at the tip, is one of the clearest signs of a happy, confident cat. This is the posture you'll often see when a cat greets you at the door or walks toward you expecting affection. On the other hand, a tail that's puffed up like a bottle brush means your cat is startled or frightened, and their nervous system has gone into a defensive state. A tail tucked low or wrapped tightly around the body usually signals fear, anxiety, or submission. Then there's the flicking tail, which people often confuse with a dog's wag. In cats, a quick flick or a hard thump of the tail against the floor usually means irritation is building, and it's often a warning sign that they want space, or that play has gone from fun to frustrating. The ears tell a similar story. When they're pointed forward and slightly rotated, your cat is alert, curious, and generally in a good state of mind. When the ears flatten completely against the head, sometimes called airplane ears, this is a clear signal your cat feels threatened or angry, and touching them in this moment is likely to get you scratched. A more subtle sign is when one ear rotates backward while the other stays forward, which usually means your cat is listening to something behind them while still paying attention to what's in front, a kind of split focus that shows up when they're unsure about their surroundings. Eyes are another area where cats reveal much more than people expect. The slow blink is one of the most heartwarming signals a cat can give. When a cat looks at you and slowly closes and reopens its eyes, this is essentially a cat's version of a kiss, a sign of comfort and trust. If you slow blink back at your cat, many of them will respond in kind, and it's one of the simplest ways to build trust with a nervous or shy cat. Dilated pupils, where the black center of the eye expands and takes over most of the visible eye, can mean several things depending on context. It might be excitement during play, fear during a stressful moment, or overstimulation when petting has gone on a little too long. Learning to read the surrounding body language alongside the eyes will tell you which one it is. Body posture rounds out the picture. When a cat rolls onto its back and exposes its belly, this is often mistaken as an invitation for a belly rub, but in most cases it's actually a display of trust and vulnerability rather than a request to be touched there. Many cats will grab your hand with their claws or bite the moment you touch that soft spot, not out of aggression, but because it's an instinctively protected area. Kneading, where a cat pushes their paws rhythmically against a soft surface like a blanket or your lap, is a leftover behavior from kittenhood, when kittens knead their mother when nursing to stimulate milk flow. Adult cats keep this behavior as a sign of comfort and contentment. And when you see an arched back combined with fur standing on end, sometimes called piloerection, this is a full defensive display meant to make the cat look larger and more intimidating to a perceived threat. Once you start noticing these signals together instead of individually, a full picture starts to form. A cat with forward ears, a relaxed tail, and slow blinking eyes is telling you they feel safe. A cat with flattened ears, a puffed tail, and dilated pupils is telling you the opposite, and giving them space in that moment is the right move. Whiskers are another part of the picture that people tend to overlook.
Relaxed, slightly out to the side whiskers usually mean a calm, neutral state. Whiskers pulled tightly back against the face often accompany fear or defensiveness, while whiskers pushed forward and spread wide can indicate excitement or curiosity right before pouncing on a toy. Combined with the ears and tail, the whiskers act almost like a confirmation signal, reinforcing whatever the rest of the body is already saying. It's also worth mentioning how context changes the meaning of these signals. A puffed tail during a thunderstorm means something very different from a puffed tail during rough play with another cat, even though the physical response looks identical. Learning your own cat's baseline, the way they typically hold their body and move when they're calm and comfortable, makes it far easier to notice deviations from that baseline, which is often more useful than memorizing a generic list of behaviors. Every cat has their own personality and their own version of normal, and the owners who understand their specific cat best are the ones who've spent time simply observing rather than assuming every cat behaves identically.
Cat sounds explained. While body language tells you a lot, the sounds a cat makes add another layer of communication, and there's more nuance here than most people realize. The meow itself is interesting because adult cats rarely meow at each other. This vocalization developed largely as a way to communicate with humans specifically, which means every meow directed at you is, in a sense, a cat speaking a language they developed just for your relationship. A short, single meow is typically a greeting, the equivalent of a quick hello when you walk into a room. A longer, drawn-out meow usually signals a demand, whether that's food, attention, or access to a closed door. When meowing becomes repetitive and insistent, it often points to urgency, and if this pattern is new or has intensified recently, it's worth paying attention to as a potential sign of stress or discomfort. Purring is often assumed to mean nothing but happiness, but the reality is more complicated. Cats do purr when they're relaxed and content, often during petting or while resting near their owner, but they also purr when they're in pain or highly stressed. Researchers believe the frequency of a cat's purr may actually have some self-soothing or even healing properties, which is why cats purr in situations that seem to have nothing to do with happiness, like at the vet's office or during recovery from an injury. The way to tell the difference is to look at the rest of the body. A purring cat with a relaxed posture and soft eyes is content. A purring cat with flattened ears, a tense body, or a puffed tail is likely using the purr as a coping mechanism rather than an expression of joy. Hissing and growling are far less ambiguous. These are clear warning signals that mean your cat feels threatened and wants space immediately. This is not the moment to push forward with affection or attempt to pick them up, no matter how much you want to comfort them. Respecting this boundary in the moment actually builds long-term trust because the cat learns that you will back off when they communicate distress rather than escalating the interaction. Chattering or chirping is one of the more curious sounds cats make and usually happens when they're watching birds or squirrels through a window. This rapid jaw movement combined with a chattering noise is thought to be related to a mix of excitement and frustration, essentially the predatory instinct kicking in with no outlet to actually chase and catch the prey they're watching. Yowling, a loud and often mournful-sounding vocalization, tends to show up more frequently at night and is more common in older cats. If yowling becomes a new pattern that wasn't there before, it deserves attention because it can be linked to pain, disorientation, or cognitive decline in senior cats, all of which are worth discussing with a veterinarian rather than dismissing as random noise. Feeding guide. Nutrition is one of the areas where owners have the most influence over their cat's long-term health, and also one of the areas where mistakes are made most often, usually out of love rather than neglect. When it comes to wet versus dry food, both have their place, but they serve slightly different purposes. Wet food contains significantly more moisture, which supports hydration and is particularly beneficial for kidney and urinary tract health, an area where cats are prone to issues throughout their lives. Dry food is more convenient, has a longer shelf life, and can offer some benefit to dental health through the mechanical action of chewing, though this benefit is often overstated. Many veterinarians recommend a combination of both, giving cats the hydration benefits of wet food alongside the convenience of dry food,
adjusted based on the individual cat's needs and any existing health conditions. Portion control is where most owners unintentionally cause harm. It's incredibly easy to overfeed a cat, especially when they're vocal about wanting more food, and many owners interpret that vocal demand as genuine hunger rather than habit or boredom. As a general guideline, an average adult cat needs roughly 24 to 35 calories per pound of body weight each day, though this varies based on activity level, age, and whether the cat is spayed or neutered, since fixed cats often require fewer calories. Most commercial food packaging includes feeding guidelines based on weight, and while they aren't perfect, they're a reasonable starting point. Obesity in cats is a serious and growing problem, and it directly increases the risk of diabetes, joint problems, and a shortened lifespan, which makes portion control one of the most impactful things an owner can manage. Feeding schedule matters almost as much as portion size. Kittens have small stomachs and high energy needs, so they typically require 3 to 4 small meals throughout the day, rather than 1 or 2 large ones. Adult cats generally do well with 2 meals a day, spaced out in the morning and evening, which mimics a more natural eating rhythm and helps prevent the boredom-driven snacking that comes with free feeding, which is generally discouraged. Free feeding, where a bowl of dry food is left out all day for the cat to graze on whenever they want, is generally discouraged because it removes the structure that helps regulate appetite and makes overeating far more likely, especially in cats who eat out of boredom rather than hunger. There's also an important list of foods that should never be given to cats, even in small amounts. Onion and garlic in any form, including powder, can damage red blood cells over time. Chocolate contains compounds that are toxic to cats in relatively small quantities. Grapes and raisins have been linked to kidney damage in some pets. Raw dough containing yeast can expand dangerously in the stomach and also produce alcohol as it ferments. Alcohol itself is obviously dangerous, even in tiny amounts given a cat's small body size. And despite the popular image of cats drinking milk, most adult cats are actually lactose intolerant, and dairy can cause digestive upset rather than the harmless treat it's often portrayed as. When a cat suddenly becomes picky or refuses food they normally eat, this deserves attention rather than a shrug. Sudden appetite changes are one of the earliest and most reliable signs that something is wrong health-wise, and a cat that skips meals for more than a day, especially combined with any other symptoms, should be seen by a veterinarian. When you do need to switch a cat's food, whether due to a health recommendation or simply a change in brand, doing it gradually over about a week by mixing increasing amounts of the new food with the old will help prevent digestive upset and make the transition far smoother. Water intake deserves just as much attention as food, even though it's often overlooked entirely. Cats evolved from desert-dwelling ancestors, which means their natural thirst rhyme is relatively low compared to other domestic animals, and many cats don't drink as much water as their bodies actually need, especially if they're eating primarily dry food. This is part of why chronic mild dehydration is so common in cats, and why it's linked to urinary tract and kidney issues over time. Simple changes like placing multiple water bowls around the home, using a pet water fountain that keeps water moving, or increasing the proportion of wet food in the diet meaningfully increase how much water a cat consumes daily, and this small adjustment often has an outsized impact on long-term urinary and kidney health.
Litter box issues are one of the most common reasons cats end up surrendered to shelters, which is unfortunate because most litter box problems have identifiable causes and solutions once you understand what's actually going on. The general rule for the number of litter boxes in a household is the number of cats plus one additional box. This means a single cat household should ideally have 2 boxes, and a 2-cat household should have 3. This isn't just a suggestion for cleanliness, it directly reduces territorial stress between cats and gives each cat options if one box is being used or feels compromised in some way. Placement matters just as much as quantity. Boxes should be located in quiet, low-traffic areas where a cat can feel safe and unobserved while using it, but they still need to be easily accessible, not tucked away in a location that requires navigating stairs or squeezing through tight spaces, especially for kittens, senior cats, or cats with mobility issues.
The type of litter you choose also plays a bigger role than most people expect. Unscented, clumping litter tends to be preferred by the majority of cats, likely because a cat's sense of smell is far more sensitive than ours, and heavily scented litters that seem pleasant to humans can actually be overwhelming or even a deterrent for cats. Texture matters too, since some cats are particular about how the litter feels underfoot, and switching litter types abruptly can sometimes trigger avoidance behavior if the new texture isn't well received. Cleanliness is arguably the single most important factor in litter box success. Scooping daily and doing a full litter change and box wash weekly keeps the box at a standard most cats find acceptable. A dirty or heavily used box is one of the top reasons cats begin avoiding it altogether, sometimes choosing to eliminate elsewhere in the home instead, which owners often misread as a behavioral problem rather than a cleanliness issue that they themselves created. When a cat suddenly stops using the litter box, the first step should always be ruling out a medical cause, since conditions like urinary tract infections, kidney stones, or bladder inflammation can make using the box physically painful, causing the cat to associate the box itself with that pain and avoid it entirely. Once medical issues are ruled out, look at the box's location, cleanliness, and size. Many cats need a box significantly larger than what's sold as a standard litter box, since manufacturers often size boxes for convenience of storage rather than for the actual comfort of the cat using them. Environmental stress, such as a new pet, a move to a new home, or even rearranged furniture, can trigger litter box avoidance, since cats are highly sensitive to changes in their environment and often express that stress through elimination habits. Grooming and hygiene. Grooming needs vary significantly depending on coat type, age, and overall health, but a consistent routine benefits every cat regardless of these differences. Short-haired cats generally do well with weekly brushing, which helps remove loose fur, reduces the amount of hair shed around the house, and minimizes the formation of hairballs. Long-haired cats require much more frequent attention, often daily brushing, because their coats are prone to matting, especially around the legs, belly, and behind the ears. Mats that are left unaddressed can become painful and may eventually require a veterinarian or groomer to remove, sometimes under sedation if they're severe enough. So staying ahead of this with regular brushing saves both the cat and the owner significant stress down the line. Nail trimming is another area that benefits from consistency, ideally every 2 to 3 weeks. Cats that are introduced to nail trimming as kittens tend to tolerate it far better as adults than cats who only experience it occasionally or after their nails have become overgrown and uncomfortable. Overgrown nails can curl and grow into the paw pad in severe cases, so regular trims prevent this while also protecting furniture and skin from accidental scratches during play. Bathing is one area where cat care differs significantly from dog care, since most cats are excellent self-groomers and rarely need baths at all. Unless a cat has gotten into something sticky or toxic, has a skin condition requiring medicated baths, or a veterinarian specifically recommends it, regular bathing is generally unnecessary and can actually strip natural oils from their coat and cause unnecessary stress. Dental care is frequently overlooked, but incredibly important, since dental disease is one of the most common health issues seen in cats by the time they reach middle age. Tartar buildup, gum inflammation, and even tooth loss are common when dental hygiene is neglected over the course of a cat's life. Brushing a cat's teeth, while not always practical for every owner, is the gold standard. But dental treats, specially formulated dental diets, and regular veterinarian dental checkups and cleanings all contribute meaningfully to keeping a cat's mouth healthy over their lifetime. Health signs, normal versus warning. Understanding what's normal for a cat helps you recognize far more quickly when something isn't right, and this distinction can genuinely be the difference between catching a problem early or missing it until it becomes serious. On the normal side, cats sleep an enormous amount, typically between 12 and 16 hours a day, and this is completely natural rather than a sign of laziness or illness. Occasional hairballs are also normal, particularly in longer-haired cats or those who groom themselves frequently, since ingested fur naturally needs to come out somehow. Frequent self-grooming itself is a healthy, normal behavior that helps cats regulate their body temperature and maintain their coat. On the warning side, there are several signs that should never be ignored. Blood in the litter box, whether in urine or stool, is always a reason to contact a veterinarian promptly. A cat that goes 24 hours or more without eating anything needs medical attention, since cats are particularly vulnerable to a hepatic lipidosis that can develop quickly when they stop eating, even for a short period. Repeated vomiting, especially if it happens more than once or twice in a short window, or if it's paired with other symptoms, is not something to wait out. Lethargy that goes beyond a cat's normal energy level, where a typically playful or curious cat suddenly seems withdrawn or unresponsive, is often one of the earliest signs something is wrong. Unexplained weight loss, especially when there's been no change in diet, can point to a range of underlying issues from hyperthyroidism to diabetes to kidney disease. Difficulty breathing is always an emergency and should never be monitored from a distance. It requires immediate veterinary attention. And a cat that begins hiding significantly more than they normally do, especially if this is a departure from their usual personality, is often signaling that something feels wrong to them physically, even if the specific cause isn't obvious to you yet. The most important thing to understand about cat health is that cats are instinctively wired to hide pain and illness. In the wild, showing weakness makes an animal a target for predators, and this instinct hasn't disappeared just because cats now live comfortably in our homes. This means that by the time a cat's symptoms become obvious to an untrained eye, the underlying issue may have been developing for quite some time already. Paying attention to subtle changes rather than waiting for dramatic ones is the single best thing an owner can do for their cat's long-term health. This is also why keeping a general mental note or even a written log of your cat's normal habits is so valuable. Knowing roughly how much your cat typically eats and drinks, how often they use the litter box, and how they usually behave in the evening makes it dramatically easier to notice when something shifts. A change that might seem minor in isolation, like drinking noticeably more water than usual, can actually be one of the earliest signs of conditions like diabetes or kidney disease long before more obvious symptoms appear. Owners who are tuned in to these small baseline details tend to catch problems months earlier than owners who only intervene once something becomes visibly wrong. And that early detection often makes an enormous difference in how treatable a condition turns out to be. Kitten versus adult cat care. The needs of a cat change dramatically over the course of their life, and understanding these differences helps owners adjust their care appropriately at each stage, rather than applying a one-size-fits-all approach. Kittens require significantly more frequent feeding than adult cats due to their small stomach size and high energy demands during this rapid growth period. They also struggle to regulate their own body temperature effectively in the early weeks of life, which means providing extra warmth, whether through a heating pad designed for pets or simply a warm, draft-free space, is important for their comfort and development. One of the most critical windows in a kitten's life is the socialization period, which generally spans from about 2 to 7 weeks of age. During this time, positive exposure to handling, new sounds, other animals, and various environments has a lasting impact on how confident and well-adjusted the cat becomes as an adult. Kittens who miss out on this exposure often grow into more fearful or reactive adult cats. Following the recommended vaccination schedule during kittenhood is also essential, since kittens are particularly vulnerable to several serious and preventable diseases during this early stage of life. Adult cats benefit most from a stable, predictable routine, since cats generally thrive on consistency in their feeding times, litter box access, and general environment. Annual veterinary checkups remain important even when a cat appears perfectly healthy, since many conditions develop silently and are far easier to manage when caught early through routine blood work and physical exams. Weight monitoring becomes increasingly important as cats move through adulthood, since gradual weight gain can happen so slowly that owners don't notice until the cat has already reached an unhealthy weight. Senior cats, generally considered those 7 years and older, require a shift towards more frequent veterinary attention, often recommended every 6 months rather than annually, since age-related conditions can progress quickly once they begin. Arthritis becomes increasingly common as cats age, and it can be subtle, showing up as reluctance to jump onto furniture or hesitation on stairs, rather than obvious limping. Kidney issues are also particularly common in senior cats and are one of the leading health concerns in this age group, which is why routine blood work becomes even more valuable later in life. Dental problems tend to compound over the years, making the dental care habits established earlier in life increasingly important as a cat reaches their senior years.
Common mistakes new owners make. Even the most well-intentioned owners make mistakes. usually because these behaviors seem harmless or even loving on the surface, when in reality they can create long-term problems. Overfeeding treats is one of the most common issues since treats are often used as a primary way to show affection, and it's easy to lose track of how quickly the calories add up relative to a cat's small size and daily needs. Using punishment as a training method is another significant mistake, since cats don't learn from punishment the way some other animals might. Yelling, spraying with water, or other punitive measures typically just teach a cat to fear their owner or avoid being seen, without actually changing the underlying behavior that was being punished in the first place. Not keeping the litter box sufficiently clean is a mistake that seems minor but has outsized consequences, since it's one of the leading causes of litter box avoidance and the resulting frustration on both sides. Introducing new pets too quickly without a gradual, structured introduction process often creates lasting tension between animals that could have been avoided with more patience up front. Feeding human food without checking whether it's actually safe is incredibly common and often comes from a place of wanting to share and bond with a pet without realizing certain ordinary foods can be genuinely dangerous. Trying to stop scratching altogether rather than redirecting it toward an appropriate scratching post fights against a completely natural and necessary behavior and usually just results in damaged furniture and a frustrated owner instead of a solved problem. And finally, skipping veterinary checkups simply because a cat seems fine on the surface overlooks the fact that cats are experts at hiding illness, meaning seeming fine isn't always a reliable indicator of actual health. One more mistake worth mentioning is misreading stress-driven behavior as a personality flaw. When a cat suddenly becomes more aggressive, starts avoiding the litter box, or seems withdrawn, it's tempting for an owner to label this as the cat simply being difficult or spiteful. In reality, cats don't act out of spite the way that label implies. Nearly every sudden behavior change has a root cause, whether it's an underlying medical issue, an environmental stressor, or an unmet need. And starting from that assumption rather than assuming bad behavior tends to lead owners toward an actual solution far faster than frustration ever does. If you made it through this entire video, you now understand your cat on a level that goes well beyond what most owners ever learn, from the subtle signals in their body language to the reasoning behind their diet, litter box habits, grooming needs, and the health signs worth watching closely at every stage of their life. If this video helped you, take a second to like it and subscribe, since we'll be continuing to put out detailed, no-fluff guides just like this one, all focused on helping you take better care of your cat. Let me know in the comments which section was the most useful to you, and if there's a specific behavior your own cat does that you still can't quite figure out, drop it below. It might end up being the topic of the next video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take good care of your cat.